Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. You know, these days, the most optimistic thing you can say about the state of American democracy in this perilous moment is it hasn't given out yet. But its enemies are plotting in the open. We see it every day, and they will not stop until they either are successful or some of them are put in prison. I truly believe that. The leader of the nation's anti-democratic faction made his reemergence at the North Carolina Republican Convention this weekend, where he once again falsely claimed the 2020 election was stolen from him.
That election will go down as the crime of the century, and our country is being destroyed by people who perhaps have no right to destroy it.
Now, his rambling speech was basically an afterthought. He's not in a position to pull the strings of attention like he was for so long. This was a Republican event in North Carolina, not an address from the Oval Office. But the people he is speaking to are hearing him. And they are hearing him because he is telling them what they want to hear. What is mobilizing them is an increasingly militant radicalization against pluralistic, multiracial American democracy as a collective project. And the forces plotting its demise have been plotting in the open. It did not work in the state and federal courts following Election Day. It did not work on January 6th, but it was not for lack of effort. We are still learning the extent of that attempt. Before the election, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton filed a dozen lawsuits to make voting in Texas as difficult as he could. This weekend, he told Steve Bannon the reason he stopped everyone in the largest county in Texas from automatically being sent a mail-in ballot in the midst of a once-in-a-century pandemic was that cutting off that voter access is what preserved the state for Donald Trump.
It was a concerted effort nationally with lots of money going into it. And just knowing that we had 12 losses that we had to win. And if we had lost one of them, like we lost Harris County, Trump won by 620,000 votes in Texas. Harris County mail-in ballots that they wanted to send out were 2.5 million. Those were all illegal, and we were able to stop every one of them. Had we not done that, we would have been in the very same situation. We would have been on election night. I was watching election night, and I knew when I saw what was happening in these other states that would have been Texas. We would have been in the same boat. We would have been one of those battleground states that they were counting votes in Harris County for 3 days, and Donald Trump would have lost the election.
If Harris County had ensured the safe voting of all of its citizens, then Donald Trump would have lost Texas. Ken Paxton is tipping his hand there. He's saying everything he did was about preserving Trump's victory in the state. He's saying the proverbial quiet part loud. But that's what all these rules are about in state after state after state, where Republicans are putting in voting restrictions, trying to take power away from officials they don't think can be trusted to overturn the elections they want them to overturn when the time comes. Now, you'll recall that Paxton also led a ridiculous lawsuit after the election to throw out over 20 million votes because he disagreed with how other states conducted their own elections. It would have, of course, installed Donald Trump, the loser, over Joe Biden, the winner. That was the goal that everyone was working towards. We are also learning more about the lengths to which the Trump White House went to overturn the election. New York Times reports at the end of December, the beginning of January, the lead up to the Trump-fueled attack on the Capitol, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows repeatedly pressed the Department of Justice to investigate conspiracy theories about the 2020 election. They report in 5 emails, Meadows asked Jeffrey Rosen, then the acting attorney general, to examine debunked claims of election fraud in New Mexico and an array of baseless conspiracies that held that Mr. Trump had been the actual victor. That included a fantastical theory that people in Italy had used military technology and satellites to remotely tamper with voting machines in the United States and switch votes for Mr. Trump to votes for Joe Biden. I mean, think about that for a second. That's the chief of staff of the United States, right? The president talking to the attorney general, pressuring law enforcement to investigate ludicrous ginned-up conspiracy theories to damage Trump's opponents. But that's nothing new, in fact. In fact, it's why Donald Trump was impeached the very first time. Remember that? For trying to extort Ukraine's leaders into opening a fraudulent investigation into Joe Biden? Now CNN has obtained audio of a phone call between Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and a senior advisor to the Ukrainian president. It took place in July of 2019, the same month when Trump told the Ukrainian president, "I would like you to do us a favor, though."
And all we need from the president is to say, I'm going to put an honest prosecutor in charge. He's going to investigate and dig up the evidence that presently exists, and is there any other evidence about involvement of the 2016 election? And then the Biden thing has to be run out I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, I see him bragging about it on television. And to me as a lawyer, it sounds like a bribe. Somebody in Ukraine's got to take that seriously.
NBC News has not obtained that audio independently, but it adds a whole new context to "I would like you to do us a favor." Giuliani really makes it clear what the favor is, if there was ever a question, which of course there was not. Now think about this for a second, right? Giuliani, Meadows, all the president's men, what are they all doing? They're all attacking free and fair elections. Started back in 2016, right? Continued in the run-up to 2020. Then it happened during 2020, then after 2020. Trump was never held accountable for his actions there. He was not convicted in either of his impeachment trials, both of which revolved around him trying to subvert the presidential election, right? The core fundamental question of a free and fair election. And what about Mark Meadows? There's an example, right, who pushed so hard for a domestic version of the same thing. Just days after Trump left office, Meadows got hired as a senior partner at the Conservative Partnership Institute, which says it was founded to, quote, to train, equip, and unite the conservative movement, which, again, increasingly what they're united around is opposition to American democracy. So I guess it's a good hire. Train them to do what exactly? I guess we're going to find out, right? Because they're going to keep trying. What sanction has Meadows received? What's to stop him from trying again? For the people who voted to overturn the election in the House and in the Senate, the Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz and Rick Scott, the majority of the Republican caucus, including Kevin McCarthy and Elise Stefanik, the Republican attorneys general who tried to sue the election to being overturned, the willing participants in the state Senate in Arizona who commissioned this fraudulent audit to destroy the Democratic legitimacy election. What penalty have they faced? What sanction have they experienced that would induce them to stop? I mean, Mark Meadows is chilling, dude. Goes on TV. Sure, he goes out to dinner in D.C., does his thing. The answer is essentially zero, which is why they will not stop until someone goes to jail. Or they find the weak point in the fence and they get through and they succeed.